The group of friends had been planning their camping trip for weeks. They had heard the rumors about the haunted forest, but they were convinced that it was just an urban legend. They packed their tents, camping gear, and enough food and water to last them the weekend, and headed off into the woods. As they set up camp, they laughed and joked, completely unaware of the darkness that lay ahead. The first night was uneventful, and they spent the time sitting around the campfire, telling ghost stories and roasting marshmallows. But as the night wore on, strange noises began to emerge from the woods. The friends huddled closer together, feeling a sense of unease they couldn't explain. They could hear branches snapping, leaves rustling, and the occasional eerie howl echoing through the trees. Suddenly, one of them spotted a figure lurking among the trees. At first, they thought it was just their imagination, but as the figure drew closer, they realized it was no ordinary creature. The figure was a woman, pale and gaunt, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. She was dressed in tattered clothes and her hair hung in matted strands around her face. The friends were terrified, and they tried to run, but the woman seemed to be following them. They tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light, but as the woman drew closer, they realized it was no ordinary creature. Panic set in as the figure advanced towards them, her features growing clearer with every step. She reached out to touch them, and they screamed, scrambling for their tents and trying to barricade themselves inside. The next day, they tried to shrug off the encounter as a strange and terrifying dream. They spent the day hiking through the woods, enjoying the fresh air and beautiful scenery. But as night fell, the forest seemed to come alive once again. The friends huddled together, feeling more scared than they ever had before. Suddenly, they heard a sound that chilled them to the bone. It was a woman's voice, singing an old folk song. They tried to ignore it, but the singing grew louder and more insistent, until they could no longer pretend it wasn't there. The friends searched the woods, but they found nothing. The singing continued, haunting them through the night. The next morning, they discovered that one of their friends was missing. They searched the woods, calling out his name, but he was nowhere to be found. They grew increasingly frantic, wondering what could have happened to him. As the sun set once again, the friends were on high alert. They had no idea what was happening in the woods, but they knew they needed to stay together if they wanted to make it through the night. They tried to sleep, but the singing kept them awake. It seemed to be coming from every direction, echoing through the trees like a macabre chorus. As the night wore on, they heard more and more strange noises. They heard footsteps, whispers, and the occasional guttural growl. They knew then that they were not alone in the woods. They huddled together, hoping that morning would come soon. But as the hours ticked by, they realized that it wasn't just one creature that was after them. It was a whole army of ghosts, all intent on dragging them down into the underworld. They tried to run, but the ghosts were faster. They tried to fight, but their weapons were useless against the supernatural forces that surrounded them. And then, just when they thought they were doomed, something miraculous happened. The sun began to rise, its warm rays chasing away the darkness and banishing the ghosts. As the sun rose, the friends stumbled out of the woods, exhausted and traumatized. They had barely made it out alive. They told their story to the authorities, who searched the woods but found nothing. The friends never went camping again. They knew that the haunted forest was real, and that the ghosts that lurked within it were not to be trifled with. Years later, one of the friends returned to the forest, hoping to put the past behind them. As they walked through the woods, they heard the same eerie singing that they had heard all those years ago. It was the ghost of the woman they had encountered on their first night in the woods. The friend froze, unsure of what to do. But then, they remembered something. They remembered the warmth of the sun, and how it had chased away the darkness. With a newfound sense of courage, the friend began to sing, drowning out the ghostly voice with their own. And as they sang, the sun rose, banishing the darkness once again. The ghost of the woman vanished, and the friend knew that they had finally conquered their fear. They left the woods, feeling triumphant and free. But as they drove away, they couldn't shake the feeling that the haunted forest was still out there, waiting for its next victims. And they knew that they would never be completely safe until they had faced their fears and overcome them once and for all.